Hello, Miss Emma. This is Mina. I'm going to read a cup from Anne of Green Gables. Anne sat up in bed. She didn't know where she was. Then she remembered this was Green Gables, and they didn't want her because she was a boy. Anne jumped out of the bed and knelt in front of the window to look out. On both sides of the house were apple and cherry trees. In the garden stood lilac trees with purple flowers. Beyond the garden, a field sloped down to the brook, and past that was a hill covered with spruce and fir trees. Anne was startled by Anne's hand on her shoulder. It's time you were dressed, Marilla said. Anne stood up. Green Gables is so beautiful, she said. That I was going to stay here forever and ever. You'd better get dressed. Never mind your imaginings, said Marilla. Breakfast is waiting soon. Anne was downstairs. Her clothes were neat. Her hair was brushed and braided, and her face was washed after breakfast. An effort to clean the dishes. Can you wash dishes right? Marilla asked. Pretty well, Anne said, but I am better at look after children. It's too bad you don't have any here for me to look after. I don't want any more children than I've got now, said Marilla. You're a problem enough. What's to be done with you? I don't know. Matthew is a silly man. I think he's lovely, and said I felt he was a kindred spirit as soon as I saw him. You're both odd, if that's what you mean, Marilla said with a sniff. You may wash the dishes. Use plenty of hot water and be sure to dry them well. After Anne washed the dishes, Marilla told her she could go outside until lunch. Anne ran to the door, but when she reached the doorway, she stopped. She turned and came back to the table. What's the matter now? Dan demanded Marilla. I don't dare go out. Anne said, I won't be able to help loving all those trees and flowers and the orchard and the brook. It's so hard to keep from loving things, isn't it? I was very glad when I thought I was going to live here. I thought I'd have so many things to love, but that dream is over. So I don't think I'll go out. I'll just sit here. And sat at the table until Matthew came in for lunch. As they ate, Marilla said, I'm going to drive to White Sands with and Mrs. Spencer was probably arranged to send her back to the orphanage. Matthew said nothing. After lunch, she hitched the horse to the buggy. Then he opened the yard gate for Marilla, and Marilla looked back as the buggy bounced along. Matthew was leaning over the gate, looking steadily after them. I made up my mind to enjoy this drive, and said, I'm not going to think about the orphanage. Are we going over the lake of shining waters today? We're not going over Barry's pond, if that's what you mean, Marilla said, and if you are going to talk, you might as well tell me about yourself. It was 11 last March, and started. I was born in the Brooklyn, Nova Scotia. My parents were Walter and Beth Shorty. They were teachers. They both died of fever when I was a baby. No one knew what to do with me, and counted. I didn't have any relatives. Finally, Mrs. Thomas said he take me. She was our housekeeper. I helped look after her 4 children, and they took a lot of looking after. When I was 8 years old, Mrs. Thomas died. His mother wanted Mrs. Thomas and children, but she didn't want me. Then what happened? Marilla asked. Then Mrs. Hyman took me because I was handy with children, and said she had 8 children. 6 of them were twins. Then Mrs. Hyman died. Mrs. Hyman and her children left, so I had to go to the orphanage. It was overcrowded, but they had to take me. Were those women good to you? Marilla asked. Anne's face turned red. She looks embarrassed. Oh, they mean to me, she said slowly, but they had to a lot worried about it. You know, they were poor, and Mrs. Thomas' husband was drunk a lot of the time. Marilla asked no more questions. Patty was stirring in her heart for Anne. What a terrible life she'd had. No wonder she longed for a real home. What if she let Anne stay at Green Gables? Matthew was set on it, and Anne seemed nice enough. Thank you for watching. Ciao.